Circuit at Elk Heart Lake, Wisconsin, Gurney, McLaren, Paul, Hulme, Surtees, Donohue, Revson, and Fulmer know they're beginning not only the richest road racing series in the world, but the most challenging lap of Road America, initiating the CanAm series. The world's best drivers had 3 days of practice and qualifications to pursue and peruse each other. For most, it was the first look at their competition. And as the track records were shattered, two things became apparent.
Well, I'm surprised by the overall excellence of the competition. They're all going very, very fast. We just made a shambles of the old records.
I think the cars are real terrific, Chris. McLarens are turning some real fast times, and boy, it looks like there's really some competition here.
We're looking at some very, very fast equipment this year, much quicker than it was last year by 2-3 seconds.
I think Bruce McLaren surprised us and just about everybody with his car. He, as they say, sort of caught us napping a little bit, maybe, with fuel injection and a lightweight monocoque and a very simple body shape.
In a dashing shade of orange and tidier than a hospital bed, the two-team McLarens, piloted by designer Bruce McLaren and co-driver Dennis Hulme, not only evoked very, very quick comments, but caught the competition with its fuel injection down. Flower Power is the ironic name that a friend gave to the big fuel-injected Chevy engine. But McLaren, who last year finished third in the series, this year came prepared to win. The McLaren 6B has more than 2,000 miles of test work behind it and enough development work to launch a satellite. A new monocoque body with suspension especially designed to straddle the phenomenal new 13.5-inch wide racing tires. McLaren grabbed the pole position in qualifying, lowering the track record by 8 seconds. Team driver Dennis Hulme was only 1/10 of a second behind his boss and showed some pardonable confidence.
All the locals have had to go a lot harder than what they ever thought they were going to go, and I think we stole the march on them, at least for this meeting anyway. We don't know the results because the race hasn't been run, but in practice it looks like we're the hot favourites.
His credentials for being the hot favorites include a blistering qualifying run of 2 minutes 12 and 6/10 seconds. But Bruce is more modest.
Bruce, the course record has been lowered by 10 full seconds, and you've added 8 miles an hour to that lap record. How?
Well, we feel that this car is only about 3 seconds faster than last year's cars. We didn't race here in the series last year, and I'd say that if we had, we would have been down around the 17, 16-second mark last year, I think.
McLaren estimates a 2 minute 17 or even 16-second lap for his last year's cars, but his competition is barely able to do much better this year. Dan Gurney, whose Ford-powered Lola with Gurney Westlake heads is one of the few front-running Fords, has been able to qualify only at 2:14.4, or almost a full 2 seconds behind McLaren. Next in line, a pair of United States road racing champions, George Fulmer and 1967 champ Mark Donohue, teamed in Roger Penske-entered Chevy-powered Lolas. Donohue and Penske's meticulously prepared Lola finished second in the CanAm series last year by virtue of keen driving and finishing every race but one. His plan for this year?
Well, as usual, it's to keep the car running for 200 miles, and this is going to be hard because we're all going to be pushing real hard to keep up with everybody else, and I don't think that there's going to be as many finishers as everybody's predicting.
George, the track record has been lowered by 10 seconds. 8 miles an hour has been added to it. Why?
Well, it's again a combination of improvements in the chassis. We are extracting much greater power out of these Chevrolet engines this year than we were last by probably 25 to 35 horses, and we have better tires. Again, the tires are probably the most critical thing we have, making us go quick.
While Donohue, second in the series a year ago, qualified fifth, last year's champ John Surtees was way down at 7th on the grid. Surtees has brought a brand new Chevy-powered Lola from the factory in England.
Biggest opposition we've got at the moment is our own sort of lack of preparation. This, I think, is our biggest problem. We decided at the last minute to come, and we took 1 or 2 chances car-wise, and they haven't quite come off yet. But I think once we get a little more into the series, we'll get a lot more sorted and become a lot more competitive. And then we'll start worrying about the competition more.
Were you surprised, however, at the competition?
No, it's quite normal. The McLarens are going very, very quick. But that again ties in with the fact that, you know, they've arrived at the first race in the most prepared state, having sort of done 3 or 4 months solid testing, which is the only way really to have done it. It's just unfortunate that we've all been rather preoccupied with other ventures.
But if McLaren and his Kiwi team, named for a flightless New Zealand bird, are showing blinding speed, the Texas Chaparral of Jim Hall has been less than fleet. Hall unveiled his wing creation in this series a year ago, and until the final race was in contention for the title. But he's 9th on the grid, a full 5 seconds behind McLaren, despite the addition of some suspension refinements and a giant 427 cubic inch Chevrolet engine. Ford's biggest engine, a 390 cubic inch model, is the power pack for a car full of problems. The sleek Hunker 2, designed by Len Bailey of England. Mario Andretti was hired by owner John Hulme to turn the new car on. But some sorting out problems, including a left-handed gear shifter, have kept the new design some 17 seconds off the McLaren pace. There may be a lot more work on the drawing board before this Ford entry is really ready. Filling out the 33-car field will be such upcoming stars as Brett Lunger, Skip Scott, Sam Posey, and Peter Revson. It was Revson's lap record set only a month ago at the Road America race, which was fractured so badly during qualifying.
Peter, the first 20 cars in the race broke your qualifying record. It's going to be a fast event, I'm sure. What do you think the key to victory will be?
Well, I don't know. I think McLaren and Hulme, what with the lap times they've set, either one of those guys, as long as they stay together, I think are going to win, because I think they're definitely superior. Definitely.
Are the McLaren superior or merely a qualifying flash? One experienced judge is retired British racing great Sterling Moss, Johnson Wax Commissioner of the Canadian-American Challenge Cup Series.
Sterling, how does the series shape up to you?
Well, I think it's terrific. We've got an awful lot of talent, you know, but the problem is that this is the first race, and as the first race, it's rather like the change in the formula. People have got new cars here, which have got a lot of bugs to be ironed out of them, and I believe that quite a few of them may not show quite as well today as they will, shall I say, on the second or third race.
The qualifying grind established the McLaren of Bruce McLaren and Dennis Hulme on the front row.
Number 17 will be car number 37, Don Ford.
They are followed by Dan Gurney and George Fulmer. Then Donohue and Chuck Parsons. With Surtees, Revson, and Hall filling out the next slots. The premier event of the 1967 Canadian-American Challenge Cup promises, by all preliminary indications, to be revealing and fast. We'll complete the pace lap and start the race in a moment. Road America, it's the end of the pace lap and the creeping is over. The green flag sends 33 cars off for the first of the 1967 Can-Am Series. Out of turn 1, and Denny Hulme has stolen the lead from his boss Bruce McLaren right at the outset. They're still in a pack as they accelerate onto the fastest part of the course, the Moraine Sweep. Behind the leaders, the order is Gurney, Donohue, Parsons, and Surtees. The Hall Chaparral is in an unfamiliar spot well back in the crowd. Team McLaren still shows the way into the Hurry Downs, a series of weaving downhill S's here at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. And they whiplash out of the sweeping half-circle carousel, then down to the kettle bottoms, like enormous orange bees leading the swarms through the woods to the winner's share of the $40,000 honey. Then around the Canada corner. Oops! Hulme is really pushing it, blasting his way into an echo chamber called Thunder Valley. So it's all Denny Hulme and teammate Bruce McLaren at the end of the first 4-mile lap. 49 more to go. Here's the first pit casualty. Australian Frank Matich and his crew from Down Under are discovering that the pressure of the Can-Am Series may be too much for a relatively small car such as his. Meanwhile, the other team from down under is way up on top and beginning to widen the lead. Dan Gurney third, the Penske Sunoco Specials, and John Surtees is sixth. The famous Chaparral is barely hanging on to ninth behind Peter Revson. The front runners have now posted an average lap time of just under 107 miles per hour. And here's John Surtees getting by George Fulmer to take over fifth place. Catapulting out of the carousel, the McLaren team is proving their qualifying performance was no fluke. Gurney is many seconds behind now. John Surtees takes the cue from the leaders, puts distance between himself and the man he has just passed, George Fulmer. Gurney is still number 3, but it's all he can do to keep those speedy orange bees in his front sights. The McLaren pit crew tells the story. 4 seconds over Dan. But no Dan. That's Donohue in third. Gurney is in the pits with trouble. And the trouble must be fairly serious. The crew is looking over the throttle linkage area. Dan will really have to go some to get back among the leaders. Looks like an adjustment has been made. And he's out of there with a vengeance.
Chevy-powered masterpieces were running away as expected, while Surtees in the red 7 put pressure on third-place Mark Donohue. Surtees started 7th. His car was indeed getting better as the weekend wore on. Sam Posey is a name well known to modern motorsports enthusiasts. He retired early in the Hudson Wire entry. That's the company with which Bob Aiken financed a long and successful American road racing career. As the McLaren blitz continues, we rejoin Les Kiter.
Gurney in the pits again. Race commissioner and good friend Sterling Moss comes over to discover the problem and sympathize with him. Evidently, he's been braking hard due to a stuck throttle. Now his tires are flat spotted. A tire change is time-consuming and unusual for the relatively short race. This stop will be a deadly one. What's this? Bruce McLaren is dropping way off to a slow crawl, falling prey to his own blistering pace. That will change the picture. And here's another change. John Surtees has blasted his way into third place. It looks as though brilliant driving may be the answer to flower power. Well, this flower power wilted and died. Too bad for builder driver Bruce McLaren, out of the car and out of the race. That leaves all the team hopes in the hands of relentless Denny Hulme. It looks as though Gurney's crew has finally patched him up. He is probably too far behind to go out for anything more than a practice run now. A let-it-all-hang-out, put-to-the-floor practice run. The heavy attrition rate has made it a new race. Surtees roars by in second. Donohue is hanging on to third. And now the pack is up closer to the front by default. Jim Hall is tightly wedged in fifth between Chuck Parsons in front, Skip Scott behind. And now Hall is trying to ooze out of the middle of that traveling sandwich, but nothing doing. Looks as though he might have got slapped in the face for that presumption. While John Surtees shows his old prowess, Jim Hall just can't seem to break loose from the crowd. He has just not been spending as much time sitting in that car as he has working on it. Maybe it's the lack of practice or the new 2G version of the Chaparral, but something has to be sorted out before the Midland Roadrunner is more competitive. And while the little boys are bickering in the back, Denny Hulme is running flat out to add some more time to his already enormous lead. There it is, 51 seconds ahead of second place John Surtees, carrying the hopes of his less fortunate teammate Bruce McLaren. Look out, here comes Hard Luck Dan with his foot on the floor trying to rewrite his misfortune, flat out to pick up some of the leftover points.
Days. In this edition, number 16, George Fulmer, is going backward in Roger Penske's Sunoco-sponsored car, while Bud Morley is going backwards quite literally in lucky number 13. It's always embarrassing to spin, but it's downright humiliating to swap ends in front of 53,000, which the record book claims were in attendance. All of them, by the way, impressed with Dan Gurney's charge from downfield. Let's go back to Les Kiter and check with the leaders.
Now uncontested, Denny Hulme is beginning to lap the loiterers. What a way to demoralize the opposition. John Surtees is still second and has a big lead. Third place, Mark Donohue is lost in traffic. Jim Hall, black-eyed from gang fighting, is now solidly in fourth. No sign of Chuck Parsons. Here is steady Charlie Hayes, who's been running a very smooth race while the big boys are wearing themselves out. The Penske team found the trouble causing George Fulmer's overheating, and they're doing something unheard of in such a short race. They are replacing the entire radiator. George Fulmer is going to finish the race, typical Penske persistence. Not so for doomed Dan Gurney. In the pits again, and this time it's got to be for good. Still no problems for Denny Hulme. 64 seconds over the second place and faster than most qualifiers. 2 minutes, 17 and 5/10 seconds. Bruce McLaren and Dan Gurney, two great drivers who become unexpected spectators, victims of a car-breaking race. Gurney is out with a broken gearbox, and Bruce's engine froze up when he lost his oil. Hard-charging John Surtees is still in second, but now Mark Donohue is beginning to make up the distance. There's Chuck Parsons, retired with some incurable infirmity. That means the Chaparral is definitely in fourth place. And here comes the unbelievable Hulme to lap the black-eyed Chaparral. And adding insult to injury, he passes him on the tight carousel. Jim Hall has seen better days than this one. Denny Hulme's 105-mile-per-hour average is a full 11 mile-per-hour faster than the previous record average. Mark Donohue has made up for lost time. He has run his typically cautious race, saved his car, and now he wants second place back again. What a dicey match these two have carried on. Only seconds apart now. Mark could make his move any time. Mark has passed Surtees, number 2, and not about to give it up this time. McLaren Chevy to humiliate the slower cars. No thought of letting up, not even on this, the last lap. He is about a minute and a half ahead of the nearest car. Donohue is second, 1/2 lap, about 2 miles behind Hulme. And last year's champ John Surtees is firmly nailed into third. An overwhelming victory for Denny Hulme and the new McLaren cars. There's the flag. The Penske team signals great race to Mark Donohue. We'll be back in a moment for Victory Lane to the 1967 CanAm races here at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. He set a new record speed doing it, 104.454 miles per hour, and he led uncontested from flag to flag. The victory brings Hulme $17,050 in prize money and a big jump in the series standings with 9 points. And perhaps most important, McLaren cars have set a new standard for performance and speed. This great win could be the first chapter in a book of McLaren team dominance of the series. Space age preparation may be the only way to go in this series. It means a lot of catching up for the other performers. Denny gets a refreshing drink after a very hot performance. Let's get down to Victory Lane and Chris Economaki for a word with the winner.
Many of the cars in the race had trouble. Did yours have any?
I wouldn't like to say. We have to have a look underneath. There's some funny noises going on and a bit of oil pressure lacking, but otherwise it ran very well.
Do you think it'd have continued for much longer?
Perhaps another 10 or 15 laps. That might have been about its lot.
You look happy. Are you tired?
Yes. Towards the end, it was getting rather boring, just having to go around and around and preserve the car as much as possible. I would have much rather been a bit more competition there.
Well, the big competition, of course, was your car owner, Bruce McLaren, who went out early with an oil line problem. Were you aware of that?
No, I didn't know what had stopped Bruce, and they told me just back at the pits just now.
Well, you've done a great job, Denny. We want to wish you well in the CanAm series. Congratulations on a great victory.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, the byword for the first Can-Am is McLaren. Now the Donohues and the Surtees and the Halls will talk and worry and rebuild, and they'll be back again soon. The story is far from finished about the most exciting racing series in the world, the 1967 Canadian-American Challenge Cup Series.